Today I want to talk about what God's Word says about government. Now, a lot of people, separation of church and state, separation of church and state. I 100% believe in separation of church and state. 100% believe in it. But we've got to understand that the founders, the way they described the separation of church and state is found in the First Amendment. So the way I like to put it is I believe in the separation of church and state as identified in the First Amendment. Congress shall pass no law establishing religion, nor shall they prohibit the free exercise thereof. Now, I want to read a part of a passage, Romans 13:1, that so often Christians take Romans 13 down through the first 4 verses or so, and almost exclusively apply that to government. Well, a large part of that passage does apply to civil government, but the first verse doesn't apply to civil government. And I want us to see that because it says in verse 1, let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Now, a lot of people go, well, what do you mean? That's talking about government. No, it's not. Because it says, let every soul be subject. Every soul. You see, there's more than one authority. Here he's not talking about multiple people. The phrase I like to use, he's talking about jurisdictions. The word jurisdiction, basically, it comes from the Latin, and the juris is the legal. That it's a legal thing. Diction, we're familiar with that just from a person's speech or their diction. Jurisdiction is the legal right to say. Who has the right to decide? Whose word is final authority? You see, the Bible actually identifies 4 jurisdictions, and I'll put them in chronological order, in the order that God instituted them. First, it's self-government, Genesis 1:26. Second, it's family government, Genesis chapter 2. Then, third is civil government, Genesis chapter 9, verse 6. And then you have the church or faith. And from that standpoint, there's a number of verses that you can look at from there. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19, I've set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Choose life. He tells you what to choose, but he told them it was their choice. And so with that, a jurisdiction, God is saying here, let every soul be subject to the governing jurisdictions. In other words, every soul is the king, it's a parliament, it's a president, it is a Congress, a Senate, a court justices, Supreme Court justices. They are to be subject or actually to acknowledge these jurisdictions. And ultimately, in the Bill of Rights, see, a lot of people will say that the Bill of Rights is not biblically based because it gives freedom of religion. But in all truth, freedom of religion is a biblical principle. Because here's the thing. When it comes to my faith and my eternal destiny, who is accountable to God for that? I am. Not my parents, not my siblings, not the government. I am personally responsible for that. Therefore, if you would, what the Founding Fathers said, because we're individually accountable to God, then we're not accountable to government for our faith. Therefore, government should not dictate anything about our faith. Let every soul be subject to the governing authority. I'm responsible to God. Nobody else should get in the way of that. And with that, we as believers have to encourage acting on things